What's up? Today I wanted to speak about how you can take your hobby and turn it into something that you do full time or pro, right? Hobby to pro. One thing I would say about this whole like transition from hobby to pro is that it stops being just about the fun of it. I think that's one of the biggest things that we tend to overlook. Usually, if it's a hobby, it's something that you do in your spare time when it's something that you want to enjoy, right? It's something that you want to be happy doing, right? And when it becomes your bread and butter, and this is what you need to do to earn money, for a living, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes it takes some of the fun out of what it is that you're doing. So if it is something that you want to remain pure in that sense, that you don't ever want it to be something that gets tainted by the fact that you have to do it for money, or that you have to, maybe go after a bag once in a while to push your way through into the next month, maybe it should remain a hobby. Is what I'm trying to say. So, first thing I would say, for this whole transition from hobby to pro is pros work using goals and milestones. They have to be there. Otherwise, what are we doing here? Is there a certain money goal? Is there a certain achievement that you want to get? And then again, knowing then, what's the time space? Am I going to achieve it in a year? Am I going to get this many clients in a year? Is like there has to be some kind of a trajectory for this now newfound business. Otherwise, it's just a hobby, and you just happen to make a couple of rands every now and again from it. Time management is also very, very important. This is the second point. Time management is something, it took me like a year and a half to figure it out when I left my job, that time management is important. And you think that it's something that is it's so like, it's second nature, but it's because, when you remove the aspect of an employer and you're kind of like, you also take into consideration that music is done with feeling, and it's very, there's emotions involved. You kind of just you work off of that, right? And that's what I did. I just worked off of the fact that if I'm not inspired today, I'm not going to really, I'll try, but I'm not going to try that hard. Whereas now I know I've got a schedule that between this time and this time I'm going to try and get creative. If I make garbage, I make garbage, but at least, I've worked on something. Something has improved. Maybe I've improved the way I use the compressor, or I learn about a new VST, or I discover a new sound that I can then use when I actually am inspired. There has to be that continual thing. I mean, I look at athletes. They train every day. They don't have to be inspired to train. And you can say, it's you're just moving your body, and it's not like being an artist. It's not creative. There's a lot of creativity to it, and you might just not be inspired to train, but you do it anyway. This is what happens when you move from hobby to pro. The third thing is mentorship and education. To get to this point of it being a hobby and something that you do and enjoy, you have to have some kind of proficiency. You know something about it, or at least you know how to dabble within that thing, whether it be building Legos or being, I don't know, you program or you code, whatever it is. You have some kind of, you've got some kind of base knowledge. It's up to you to develop that. Just like you would at a job, you have to develop your base knowledge. You have to improve what you're doing. It's the same reason your company will send you out for training. You have to do the same thing for yourself, because no one's going to help you get better. You have to do it for yourself. Yeah. So the fourth point was a tricky one for me to learn, was like self-doubt and fear. These are things that are going to creep in all the time. If I go back into my old journals just before I left, you'll see how much the fear it hit a pinnacle. It's a crescendo where on a daily basis, I would move back and forth between being confident about leaving my job and not being confident at all, and basically down talking myself. It was terrible. Like it was destructive, where I would say, like, you're an idiot. Why would you do this? This is dumb. I mean, I still have it now, even, where I'm like, why did you do this? This is dumb. Like, you're stressing out so much for this thing when you could be like those people over there doing that thing. Look at them. They're relaxed. It's the weekend. You should be chilling now. yet you're here and you're trying to finish a job for a client, or you're worried that you don't have cash to take you through to the next month. These are the new struggles. These are the new worries that I have now. And again, it brings in that there's a heavy element of self-doubt. And I think the only way around it is to just push through, to have a bunch of people around you who can tell you that, like, you got this far. Like, it's silly when your friends say it to you. They're like, you got this far. Why would you be worried? Like, look at all the stuff that you've done. And you actually think back on it and you're like, actually, it's not that bad. So understanding that you're going to have those moments is super crucial. Otherwise, you end up quitting. I've seen so many artists just quit because they can't handle it. There's the self-doubt is crippling, and they don't know what to do with themselves, and they're like, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm going to go back to my 9 to 5. I don't want to have to deal with it. So understanding it, I don't know if it makes it any better, but I guess being aware of it does. Knowing that it's going to come up. It is going to happen. Doesn't matter how much you earn. Doesn't matter what opportunities you get. Doesn't matter which doors you open for yourself. That self-doubt and that fear will always be there. You just need to know how to control that feeling when it does come. And then the last thing is then celebrating milestones. This is something that I'm terrible at. And I think the only reason I'm doing it now is because I'm starting to understand why people say celebrate your milestones. It's not so much to say just, chill out, have a party, feel good about it, and then, celebrate your milestone in that way. Celebration of a milestone, especially when it's off of a very small victory, will never be done unless you do it yourself. And the whole benefit to it is you get to punctuate that moment. You get to, put a little exclamation mark to say, yeah, I did that. And then you're able to then go back into that thought. I think it's the same reasons. It's funny. For certain anniversaries, I'd keep champagne corks, and those they would be memories. Maybe write on them, or I'd keep them to the side to say, yeah, this is how many years we've been together, or anything like that. And it's those moments where, like, you remember, you go back, and it's for those times where you have the self-doubt, where you're like, actually, am I able to do this? Then you remember that moment, that nice moment that you had, where you were like, oh my gosh, we actually managed to go through this whole project. We got to the end. We even celebrated it. It was such a nice moment. I can do it again. And then through that, you almost pull yourself out the dirt, and you have a little movie moment to say, actually, I can do it. And then you push yourself through. It's super important to have those. And I get it now. I understand why. Because if you don't celebrate them, then you think you're garbage all the time, which is obviously not healthy. It's not good for your mental health, especially in a situation like this where you're working alone most of the time. Yeah. So, yeah, look, there are other points. There are other things to consider. There's the financial aspect. Do you have enough money to leave your job? There's the social aspect. I tend to be okay when I'm by myself, right? I know that there's people that would go absolutely insane. They would just want to bring someone into their team just so that they have another human to talk to. I do get moments like that, but I guess we're all built a bit different. But there's so many other things that you need to figure out. And it's important. I think the last point is that it's important to write down all the inner battles you're facing now, because those inner battles, as small as they are now, while your thing is still a hobby, they can very quickly become monsters when you step into the world of entrepreneurship or freelance. They can really become barriers for you. So dealing with as many of them as you can now is good. Obviously, that's not always